Hi, Steph from the BMW DIY Guide. My video today is going to be the walkthrough of the AvinUSA Android 8.1 10.25 inch display that I have installed in my BMW F32. This is a great addition to my 435. This has been an iterative addition as well, because as I've had previous builds, this is the latest 8.1 Android build of this display, and it really adds some great functionality. So even if you're coming from an integration place where you're upgrading as the product changes over time, or if you're changing from the OEM, this makes a huge difference. While I'm thinking about it, please make sure to click subscribe, click the little alarm button so you get the notifications as I have more videos coming out, because I always do, and I've got some really cool projects coming. So let's get out to the garage, let's take a look at the functionality of what this is going to bring to your car. Alright, so we're out in the car. I'm starting at the Idrive level. I'm not going to obviously walk through the Idrive because that's not the focus of this walkthrough for the Avin 8.1 Android display. So it's a touchscreen. If you're ever in the Idrive settings and you want to get back, there's different combinations of how you can get back to the Android side. I find personally it's easiest to just touch the screen. So let me scroll all the way back over to the beginning. So what you're looking at is an Idrive 5, kind of 6 looking level tiles. These tiles look much like the native newer builds of Idrive from BMW. I'm currently cycling through these tiles using my Idrive controller down in my central dash. So as you can see, that works. And I can scroll back and forth, and then I can select them by pushing down just like I would on the Idrive side. So what we've got going is the native music player. So let me come back and walk through each tile. So we have a native music player. So if you have MP3s, you name it, on sound files, you can install them on an SD card, you can have them on a USB drive, and you can launch them through this native player here. You've got navigation, and I'm going to walk through each tile, but let's start at the top. So you've got your native navigation, which can be the iGo app, it can be here, it can be Google. You can associate what navigation app you'd like to run off the display. So you can run your favorite depending on what you'd like. You've got your Bluetooth tile for Bluetooth association. Next over, you've got video. This is a dedicated video player. I'll walk through that. Car info is the Idrive side. So this takes us back to the Idrive side itself. You can also get back to the Idrive side by here in my Idrive controls down on the center console. For example, I press the radio button, and we go right back to the radio side. So as you can see, there's good integration between the two different sides, right? So browser, you've got, excuse me, browser. You have a native web browser here locally. It's the Google Chrome. So you can use the browser if you've got internet connectivity. File manager, pretty straightforward, managing files on USB drives, on any SD cards in your camera, and so on. A forward-facing DVR, a dashboard functionality showing speed and RPMs and some other basic functions. Your phone link, this is one of the apps you're going to need to use to connect if you want to use Android Auto or iPhone, or the iPhone CarPlay or Apple CarPlay. Apps, this is how you get into a application icon view like you would on an Android, Android tablet or similar, and then settings. So like I said, I'm going to go through each tile separately. Like most things Android, you can drag down from the top and it'll show you other shortcuts. It'll show you, Wi-Fi, sound, camera, settings, power. It'll show any apps that are currently running, any status notifications that you've got going. It updated some apps off the Play Store. So all your typical basic Android functionality. All right, so let's start with music. Now, I'm currently muted. I'm muted for there just for a second. I'm not really going to be able to play a lot of music on this video because whenever I do, I get a copyright violation and YouTube takes my video down. So forgive me for not being able to play a lot of music. That we're just gonna have to sidestep that. But you've got your native player here that you can browse through. You can look at all your different sources for where that information is coming from. So if you have a large MP3 collection or something similar, you can throw on an SD card or USB drive. You can play them through here natively. It'll pull album art and track information if you've got it. So it's nice to have that native. You've got your navigation, which in this case is the currently the iGo app that it came with. And as you can see, performance is good. I mean, it zooms in and zooms out pretty easily, showing different points of information, how you want to use it, where you want to go. There's no lag or issues there. I also had good GPS lock as well. So if you're using, when you're using the GPS, make sure that the antenna is in a good place that gets a lot of satellite signal, right? So very frequently I see things where, it doesn't want to lock on or doesn't find where you are, but then also you've got bad GPS reception. And when we get to apps, I'll touch on that a little bit more. But navigation, so you can use whatever navigating app you would like to be able to move around. I alternate between using this and using my phone. Sometimes the native Idrive navigation that I still have in, I don't use that nearly as much. I probably use my phone 50% of the time, this maybe 40% of the time, and the Idrive, the native OEM navigation probably 10% of the time. So let's go back to the beginning. So Bluetooth, all your typical Bluetooth functionality. As you can see, I'm rolling through the controls. I can use my Idrive controller, which is nice, so that you've got this layer of integration. You have your typical Bluetooth phone integration to be able to dial, call lists, and all the like. Because I have native Bluetooth integration on my Idrive side, I don't use this very much, candidly. I don't make phone calls through the Android side, and because of that, I didn't run the microphone either. So, but there are definitely people that do, and it works well. You can go into your settings, you can set up how your Bluetooth works, all that sort of stuff. And I'm just using my Idrive controller, rocking my controller, pressing down to select, dialing left and right to move. So that works really well. The Bluetooth works well. It's just, like I said, not a function I use very much. I don't take a lot of calls in the car, but I do. If I do, I generally take them through on the Idrive side, just be out of habit. So you have a native video viewer. So if you're somebody that has a lot of movie files or something similar, you can again load them on a USB or SD card. This is a sample file that came on the display. A little Fast and Furious, again muted, so I don't get a takedown on my video. But it plays well, and you can blow it out full screen. Again, you can go through the sources of wherever these wherever your movie files are sitting. Works well. It's nice to have that functionality, especially for longer drives. Again, I'm not endorsing breaking any laws. If it's illegal to watch videos while driving in your region or country, don't do it. I'm not saying to do so. You have your car info, which again, car info is the Idrive side, right? So here we are back in the native Idrive side. Everything's working. My steering wheel controls work, just fine. As we go through this, everything still works just fine, and we can bounce back and forth. So let me go back to the Android side. Excuse me. So again, native browser. This is just Google Chrome. So it gives you some functionality if you'd like while you're out and about. Obviously, you would need Wi-Fi or hotspotting off your phone. Maybe what you're doing, it's nice to have a bigger screen than if you're out somewhere off your phone or similar. So it's nice to have that functionality. File manager, again, pretty typical. Just typical file manager, so you can use your internal storage, SD cards, USB drives, all those sort of things, and get into your storage. So whether you need to install files or applications, this is how you can do it. All right, so let's go back. There we go. For DVR, this is some interesting functionality, and I will say I haven't fully explored this yet. I've got the integrated camera surround that goes around my mirror, so it replaces the OEM rearview mirror surround and has a camera embedded in right here, which is nice. And as you can see the front wall of my garage. This new version of the software, and if you notice, it's blinking orange up here in the corner. I have an SD card inserted into the side of the camera, and it basically continually loops. This is always recording, always running. There's a lot of people that run always, that always have a DVR4 dash cam, always recording. You can have that for traffic reasons. You can have that for insurance reasons. There's a lot of different reasons why you can have that running. I have it enabled right now. I think I've got a 16 gig SD card mounted in the side of the camera, so it's always running just for the sake of it. Now, if you tap on the app, you get a series of controls. Now, the one thing that I haven't worked with, but is actually kind of cool. So let me whoops. Forgive me, I just hit a radio button, which is why it switched back on me. So if you notice, if you see this calibration in the center, it has a camera functionality for lane control. Now, as you can see, as it's trying to calibrate, and it's going to calibrate wrong because it's staring at my garage wall. This is really neat. I haven't really played with this yet. You can have this lane departure set up with alarms that if you're sliding out of your lane, it's an interesting retrofit of functionality that I find pretty cool. So let me turn it back off because it's going to calibrate wrong right now. But it's pretty neat, and it gives you a lot of functionality to be able to go through. You can even have a windowed mode depending on what you're doing. But you've got some cool functionality here to play with. And the forward-facing camera is fun. I shot some video a couple of years ago with a predecessor to this when I was out at one of the BMW Club track days, and it was kind of fun. It was kind of fun to zip around and get video of it later and record your exploits, as it were. So a lot of fun here. All the different things you can do. You can set the way you can set your recording, lock it. You can take pictures. All things that you'd like to do, but really straightforward, and it's cool functionality to add. So let's talk about the dashboard for a moment. This is a function I don't use very much, candidly. It shows speed and RPM that it'll read off of the motor. The one thing that, to answer any questions that I frequently will get questions if there's a way to manipulate this dashboard or change its values. At the time being, no, there isn't. There's no good way to change this. So for example, it's set in liters, it's set in kilometers, which, for the US is wrong. Now, the majority of the world, that works. But this dashboard is not currently configurable. I know that Avin has been taking a look at that, and there's some talk about giving some controls around this dashboard so you could change the measurements. But at this time, there isn't that I'm aware of. So it does show basic information. It does work. My car's currently off, so it's not showing any information. It looks like a dead gauge, but it does work. I'll see if the, see the parking brake just changed for me. So it's now saying pull, turn it off, right? So release, so it's released and it's pulled. So you can see it's working. It's just there's no information to display because the car's off. All right, let's talk about phone link. So I'm going to only talk about this briefly because the full walkthrough of either Android CarPlay or Apple or hooking your phone up through an Apple for Apple CarPlay or the similar is a whole nother subject and is not complicated. You just have to do it right the first time. And what I wanted to give was a high-level function of how this display works, show its performance, show its basic functionality, and I'll deep dive into that another day. So that is what that app is for. Is this phone link is getting into that side and phone mirroring and Android Auto and CarPlay, Apple CarPlay, and so on. All right, so apps, this is where you get into Android tablet sort of view of your different apps. You can see many of the same ones, Bluetooth and dashboard and music and video, Chrome, Chronos Viewer. Let's touch on that one really quickly. This is actually a satellite. It shows your GPS satellites. So this is a great way of testing your GPS reception. So if you are having a problem, I get a lot of comments on my videos about, I don't get good, quick satellite reception, that sort of thing. This is a great way of looking at your satellite reception. Where is your antenna mounted in your car? Where is it in your dash? Are you getting good reception? And this isn't too bad considering I'm sitting inside my garage right now, right? So I'm under a roof, garage door down, and still can see a number of satellites. I can see 12 satellites in view, and that's changing as it's going. But as you can see, this is a great way to test. So for the folks that are wondering what their satellite strength is like, this will change interactively. So if you literally pull your antenna out and put it in different places, you can check its strength and find what works best for you. So if you're having a GPS lock problem when you're in the navigation screen, this is a great tool for you to be able to see what your satellite strength is like. Here in the US, we don't use DAB+, so that's not there. File Explorer, Gmail, HBO Go I installed just for fun. The HD DVR is your forward-facing camera. iGo is your navigation. Google Maps installed. The Play Store, TPMS, and I have the factory TPMS, so I'm not running the aftermarket. And then it comes natively with a YouTube app just for fun. So if you want to subscribe to the BMW DIY guy, there's a great way to do it. And then lastly, settings. All right, so settings are fairly basic as we go through this. So let me backtrack because I was sitting on a different screen. So let me start at kind of what is the top level of settings, because that was one layer down. So at the top layer, you've got navigation, and this gives you the ability to change your navigation app. So if you have the iGo, or you have Google Maps, or you install here, you can change that, and that'll change the association of that top level tile. It'll change to whatever navigation you want to use. Language, again, if you want to change your native language for the display itself. Time, I usually set it to auto sync GPS, so I don't have any time discrepancy. Audio, so these are basic audio settings you've got from the Android side, right? So you can control those settings. You also can go into some basic bass, mid, and some custom basic settings as well. So if you want to tweak your sound coming from the Android side a little bit, if you've got good speakers in your car, you're probably going to want to do that. So camera and video settings, this is also a really important screen for those of you, depending on what you have in your car. So in my case, I've got the OEM backup camera. So I've got it set to original camera, as you can see right here. I do not have a 360 camera. So if you put in an aftermarket, you want to check that. You can set it if you want to mirror your rear camera, you want to block video while driving, whether you've got radar or not, all those sort of things. You can select those things here. Since all of that's coming from my OEM side, I've just got original camera checked, and I'm good to go on the screen. But this is a great way of adding aftermarket functions that you might not have. So if you added the aftermarket backup camera, you're going to want to check that. So. All right, so let's get into, and then you've got settings, and this is more of that classic Android side of your settings, your Wi-Fi, your connected Bluetooth, app permissions, sound, screenshots and storage, security, your user accounts, which you're going to want to put in so you can get into Google Play, and all of your Android level settings, right? So I'm not going to drill into every single one of those, because those are pretty standard Android functionality. Let me backtrack. Now, the screen that I was on when I first started, and I want to come back to, is this screen. This is that factory setup screen. It shows you some basic information around build, what version of Android, and so on. But the factory setup is going to be really important for you. I talk about this in my DIY install video. In case you missed it, or you're checking out this video to see what it's like to run one of these before you install it, this factory setup is going to be really important. The code is 1314. And then that will get you into the device level settings. And there's a couple of things in here that are going to be really important. So I want to call them out. There's a lot of functionality in here. You've got the ability to change settings and suddenly have things not work right anymore. So please be careful as you go through this. Some of these settings don't matter as much. Some really do. So the top thing, and this is all touchscreen in here, the top one is ARM setting. So you've got all kinds of different options on, what your CD is, whether you've got auxiliary or TV, amplifier settings, auxiliary settings. One thing to check on. Now, I've got mine set to automatic. Some people have to run the aux cord from the new wiring harness to the aux port under their armrest. I never have. Some people have to run that cable, some don't. I don't know what the difference is, but I find in my case that I've got aux switching mode set to automatic, and I've got no sound and feed issues. And I didn't have to run the aux cable. I don't believe that if you have to run the aux cable, I don't believe changing that will make you not have to run it. But I think it has to do with the way that the Idrive side consumes the aux signal that comes in and immediately flips to that information. So DVR, Bluetooth, where you want the Google app to sit and the Bluetooth modules and so on. So as we scroll down through all this, you can see that there's quite a few options here as we go through this, right? So some matter, some don't as much. So you got your advanced settings. So this is, you can change the way the tiles look. So I'm running the Idrive 6. Those top level tiles look like that. If you'd like, you can actually go back through several of the other former BMW styles of those top level tiles if you like the earlier view. I'm using the latest Idrive 6, and if you really want, there's Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and Jaguar in there as well. So if you really want to change things around, okay. There's some functionality in here that is not applicable for BMWs. There's some Audi functionality, as you can see, and you can look at all those different options. Boot logo. There's a couple of native boot logos that you can put that you can use, as you can see as you scroll through them. Okay, so you can have whatever boot logo off the device you would like. Now, the thing in here that matters the most is car type. Okay, so what I have is I came from the 8.8 inch screen, OEM screen, so F32 8.8. So the things that really matter the most as you look at some of these options, so if you notice, mine is set right here to F48, F49, 8.8 to 10.5. So don't get caught up. Don't worry that I'm like, well, I've got an F32, this is F38. That's not going to work, right? It's going to be fine. So the main things you want to focus on are the types. So you've got the NBTs and the CICs. So if you came from, so for me, an F32, 2016 F32, excuse me, 2014 F32. So that would be NBT. And I had the 8.8 and I'm going to 10.5. So that's the option I want to select so it fills the screen. If you have the 6.5, NBT 6.5, you have two different options. One is going to put and this is all for the Idrive side. Android will always be full screen, always. But the Idrive side, a 6.5 does not stretch well to 10.5. That's almost double. So it'll be really distorted and stretched. So on the Idrive side, if you're coming from the basic 6.5 inch screen, it'll have your Idrive on one side and it'll have a template overlay on the other that shows a little bit of basic information. So it doesn't stretch your Idrive so badly. There is an option depending on the age and build of your car. If you have an application like Bimmer Code, or you know someone who can do coding, you can actually code your car to change its internal display. So say you're coming from a 6.5, you can actually go into the coding of your car with one of these applications or someone who has the knowledge and tell the car that it has a factory 8.8. Even though it never did, right? There's a couple of settings in the deep settings of your car, and this is not the display, not Idrive. I literally mean the coding of your car, in your ECU of your car. You can tell it that it had the 8.8 inch display, and then at that point here, you can set it to the same setting, the 8.8, 10.5, it'll fill the screen completely, and it'll be a good way to go. So if you're coming from a 6.5 inch screen, I strongly recommend you look up a local coder, a local BMW coder that can code your car, or you get familiar with an app like Bimmer Code. It's available off the Android Play Store. You can get some basic advice from like Bimmer Post on which values to change. There are two values to change in the expert settings, which can be a little scary once you get down in that deep. But there are two values to change to tell your car that it had the 8.8, not the 6.5. So if you're coming from there and you can do that, I highly recommend it. So, but this is a very important screen for getting your native Idrive displayed properly on a 10.5-inch screen. So that's really important. There's lots of other settings in here. You can get into the batch APK installation, the factory update, or update factory settings. These are all files that you would get from Avin if you need them to update this information. I think in all the years I've been running an Avin display, I think I've gotten an updated factory setting like once. So not too worried about it. So basic vehicle information, which side of the car you're sitting on, and volume, whether you want the volume bar to show up. And then you've got this learning touch buttons. I have not worked with this at all. I'm just gonna be clear. I haven't done it, but you can customize your buttons. So my steering wheel controls work. You can go through this and you can change which buttons are associated to what. Every now and then I get a question about, well, I press the phone button or I press the speaker button on my steering wheel and something different comes up. Well, yes, you can change it. You can come in here into these factory settings. You can go down here to the learning touch buttons and you can change that setting. I haven't done it, but you can see that you can change on which ones are set, which ones are not set, right? So you can change that configuration and customize it to how you like it, which is really nice. So that's a cool ability that you can map your car kind of laid out specifically how you would like it laid out. And that's the end of the most important things here in the factory settings. So let me back out. I'm going to back out and back out. Okay, so as far as the top level tiles, I mean, that is the basic level of functionality. As you can see, the screen is nice and clear. There's zero issues about responsiveness. I mean, you can just zip back and forth. Navigation is quick. The OS is quick. I have a few basic applications installed because, like I said, when I look back at apps, I've got a few basic apps installed. So you can run Pandora. You can run different music services really simply, really easily. Which is candidly one of the reasons why I don't use Apple CarPlay very much. I don't mirror my phone very much because I don't need to. The apps that I need are here or they're coming off the Idrive side. So really good, simple functionality, or a real simple setup, really easy to work with through the whole thing. And like I said, the buttons, I won't pan the camera down because all I'm doing is just pressing buttons. I'm pressing buttons here on my Idrive controls, back to radio, back to media. Here I am completely back on the Idrive side. Everything is working great. So all in all, I'm really pleased. I think this is a fantastic upgrade for your car. It is worth it. I think it's absolutely worth it. Even coming from the 8.8, I found that this screen is much sharper and more clear. Not just bigger, obviously, but is more clear than the 8.8, the OEM. So that was a worthy upgrade for me just on that alone. You get this added functionality. I had a lot of fun a couple of years ago sitting out in a parking lot. I had to wait a couple of hours. I installed a TV app and streaming TV app, and I was able to watch the U.S. Women's World Cup, here on my display, sitting in a parking lot. It was better than off my phone because it's bigger. And, through the speakers here in my car, my kids and I had a great time. So it was a nice functionality to have. If you have the 6.5-inch screen, it is a huge upgrade from the OEM 6.5. And again, I really want to stress, if you're able to code your car to the native 8.8-inch display, do it. Just absolutely do it. Go out and make sure that it can be done, get it done, and it's going to make a difference. Even if you can't, if you're coming from the real basic model with the 6.5-inch screen that cannot, and you've got it on the Idrive side, again, your screen will be split with the Idrive on one side and this template on the other side showing some basic information. It's still worth it because the screen is much more clear. It's a sharper display than the native 6.5. So even when it's the 6.5-inch image on half of the screen, it's going to look better than what it did before. Plus, candidly, this display looks better. The 6.5-inch screen, it's got that massive thick bezel with the big plastic on either side and a real kind of small boxy screen in the center. This just looks better visibly as well. The display itself has got a little door here on one side that you can pull off and put in an SD card. I've got my USB drives routed to my glove box, so if I put anything on a thumb drive, I can just plug them into my glove box. I have that white box adapter for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto sitting in my glove box, or anything else that I'd like to get plugged in there. I've got my forward-facing camera going, and then of course with OEM backup camera functionality as well. So all in all, this really is a fantastic upgrade and just continues to get better. I mean, this is, I think, the third or fourth generation of the Avin Android display I've had in my F32, and they keep improving, they keep getting better. And even for me, there's some functionality that I've yet to learn. Like, for example, I mentioned about that ADAS of the front DVR, that lane control. So the next time I'm out driving around, I'm going to have to try this. I'm going to check it out and give it a chance to calibrate properly, and then see how that functionality works. That might be kind of neat. So I'm looking forward to testing that even further. But all in all, you can see this is a really positive upgrade, really nice clean screen, and it's something I highly recommend. All right, back inside, and as you can see, as we did that high-level review on how all the tiles work, all the functionality, that integration in with your Idrive, your original Idrive, and really the benefits this is going to bring to your car. So as you look at this, I really find that this is an upgrade that is absolutely worth it, kind of no matter where you come from, right? So if you're coming from really the base models with that 6.5-inch screen, this is a massive upgrade, especially depending on what head unit you've got in your car. So if you didn't have the OEM navigation, you didn't have the Bluetooth integration, this brings that entire suite of apps to you that you didn't have before. And like I mentioned before, and I won't go through it again, if you are coming from the 6.5-inch screen and you're going to this new 10.25, definitely check into getting your car coded, if it can be. Some of the older ones cannot. They don't have the option to be able to be flipped up to a larger screen, but many of them do. So definitely look into it. It's going to be worth your time to get that done. So check into that. But all in all, as you look at it, so even if you're coming from a place with the OEM navigation and the 8.8-inch screen, this is still a huge step up. The one thing I've never understood is there's some users out there, or some owners out there, that were taking, like, for example, the 10.25-inch OEM screen from some of the X5s and retrofitting them into their F32s, which also meant you were cutting your dash. So there were all kinds of integration problems there. So not only are you physically cutting your dash to make the screen fit, it was never intended for that, and it really caused some issues. When you can take a screen like this, that is better, higher resolution, really clear in day and night, and integrate it in, and then add all of this Android functionality. So even if you come from a feature-rich OEM car, this just gives you a better screen, adds functionality, adds all of the Android side, but then even potentially can save you some money over time, because instead of paying BMW a couple $100, once a year for their navigation updates, well, you're running navigation off the Android side, and you know, Google Maps or Here or, you know, the iGo app, you never have to pay for BMW navigation updates ever again, which has always really struck me as something really expensive. So you won't have to do that ever again. So all in all, I hope you found this really helpful. Again, please click subscribe and the little alarm button. That way you make sure you get all my updates and notifications that are coming out. I thank you for your time. I try to answer as many questions as I get, and I look forward to seeing you on my next video.